Hi guys, and welcome back. I got some sad news to share with you guys. I actually lost my little parrot Kiwi yesterday. I'm not going to change the name of my channel because I do plan on getting more parrots. They are a lot of comfort to me because of the things that I've dealt with. It's parrots and birds and animals, but especially my parrot, was a big comfort to me. It makes me sad that I lost him. But like I said, I am going to get more parrots. And not because I didn't love Kiwi, but because, like I said, Kiwi was a big comfort to me. So I need that comfort back. Um, but today's story is going to be about the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw my backstory clip in there, and then we'll jump right into the story. Hi guys, welcome back. First of all, I want to say I'm sorry about the hair. I just had a shower, so it's still wet, so it looks kind of bad. But I'm going to, from now on, I'm going to start off by telling a little bit of my backstory of why I'm even doing this channel. First of all, I'm doing this channel because doing the research on the crimes and doing the videos keeps my mind busy. And there's a very specific reason as to why I have to keep my mind busy. Another reason why I'm doing this video is because the videos and the channel is because I'm hoping that one day I can make a little bit of money off of it, and also just bring some awareness about a specific thing. And this has to do with my backstory. I want to make a little bit of money of it because well, I'll explain that in a minute. Well, so my backstory. Um, First of all, I'm a mother to 6 kids, 4 girls and 2 boys. I only have 5 living kids left because on December the 28th of 2020, which wasn't very long ago, my son committed suicide. And it's because, and he did it by shooting himself in the head. And I'm the one that found him. So, the main reason I'm telling you guys this is because in some of the, some of the videos that I do, it mentions suicide, and I make it emotional. If things to do with guns, I get emotional sometimes. So I just wanted to explain why, in case I ever do that. Now, the reason I want to make money off of this is because I want to start a foundation in my son's name that will help families. Everybody thinks about the expense of the funeral, but what they don't think about is maybe the cleanup after something like that. You have to pay to have it cleaned. And they don't think about the fact that sometimes family just needs to take time off work and they still have to pay bills. So sometimes they don't get that luxury or that need met to be able to take time off work. So I'm hoping that one day these videos may do some good, and I may be able to start that to help families in this situation. So that's my story, guys. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I need to do this. And that's why sometimes I may get emotional in the videos. Just if anybody's out there that's watching, that's having thoughts of suicide, it's not worth it. The pain don't go away. It just goes to the family members. It just passes on, so it don't go away. Just go get help, because it's out there. Okay, now today's story does have a disclaimer. There's going to be strong language, sexual content, and graphic descriptions of crime scenes. So, viewer discretion is advised, and no kiddos should be watching this. Now, Richard Ramirez, he was a serial killer that operated in California between April 10th, 1984 and August 24th of 1985. He was born in El Paso, Texas on February the 29th, 1960 to Julian and Mercedes Ramirez. Richard's father, Julian, and his mother was born in Mexico. Now, Richard's father, Julian, was actually a police officer in Mexico, and then they moved to El Paso, Texas, and they had their children there. Now, they had 5, and Richard was the youngest. Now, once they moved to Texas, Julian became a laborer on the Topeka Santa Fe Railway. And he was an alcoholic, so he became very violent. He had fits of anger and rage, and it resulted in physical and mental abuse towards his wife and his children. At the age of 12, Richard was strongly influenced by his cousin, Miguel Ramirez. They also called him Mike. Now, Richard had already been, by the age of 10, he was already smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol, and he started hanging out with his cousin Mike around the age of 12. So around the age of 12, things was already falling apart for Richard. Now, Mike was a dedicated Green Beret who had served in Vietnam, and he himself was a serial killer. During his time in the Vietnam, serving in Vietnam, he would rape and murder women, and he would actually take pictures with his victims. Mike would sit around and drink and smoke weed with Richard, and then he would sit around and tell him stories about, his crimes, his murders, his victims. He would brag about it to Richard. He even showed Richard some of the photos, and in some of the photos, he would be posing with like the severed heads of the women. And he would show, these pictures to Richard, and you would think that this would just repulse Richard, and Richard would just be scared and hate this. But no, Richard, he was amused. Like, he thought it was cool. He wanted to know more, so he would always ask more and have Mike tell him more. Mike would also teach Richard some of his military skills, some of the things that he learned while in the military. One of the things that he did teach Richard was how to kill with stealth. So, what are you doing, Mike? This is a 12-year-old boy, and you're teaching him basically to become a killer. So no wonder Richard turned out the way he did. No wonder Richard became a serial killer. I mean, come on, Mike, what are you doing? Richard, during the age that Richard was at and he did this, they're learning what type of people to be at that age. Children are. So he was taught that this was okay. Like, I'm not holding up. I think that the things that Richard did was horrible and it should have never happened. But he was taught that it was okay, and he was taught that this was something good. So, in a way, it was his upbringing that caused this. Now, at that time, at 12 years old, Richard was sleeping in the local cemetery. And he did this so that he could try to escape his father's abuse, because it had gotten really bad. May 4th of 1973, Richard was over at Mike's house, and Mike and his wife got into a very heated argument, and Mike fatally shot his wife. Now, Mike would be arrested, he would be found not guilty due to presumed severe wartime PTSD. Now, even though he wasn't found guilty, he was ordered to go into a mental hospital. Now, he was in the mental hospital, but they released him in 1977. Now, Richard witnessed him shooting his wife. So afterwards, Richard became kind of sullen and withdrawn from family and friends. He kind of became a loner, so to speak. Later that year, Richard would move in with his older sister Ruth and her husband Roberto. Now, about the same time, Richard started using LSD, and he started developing an interest in Satanism. Richard's brother-in-law Roberto, remember him? Yeah. Well, he was a peeping Tom. And he would take Richard out on these night outings, and he would show Richard how to sneak around houses and hide and watch these women through the windows. So there again, another family member teaching Richard that it's okay to act this way, to do these things, that, women didn't deserve their privacy, and just teaching him bad habits. So they continued to do, the nightly outings. And when Richard's cousin Mike got out of jail, he actually joined them. So it was like a big group outing to go and watch through people's windows and watch these women. Mike and Roberto were some dumbasses. In Richard's adolescence, he began to meld and mold his sexual fantasies with violence, such as forced bondage and rape. While Richard was in school, he did get a job at a Holiday Inn, and he would use his pass key to go into the guest rooms while they're sleeping and steal their stuff. So this is when his stealing begins. One occasion, Richard would caught 2 children in an elevator, and he sexually fondled and molested these children, but no reports was made and nothing was done. He didn't lose his job or anything like that. I couldn't really find an answer as to why this wasn't reported and nothing was done about it, but that's the case. That's what happened. What caused Richard to lose his job is there was a lady in a hotel room waiting on her husband to return. Now, Richard went in, he tried to rape this lady, but the husband came back before he could. Now, the husband beat him, like severely beat him, and the cops was called and Richard was taken in, but the charges was dropped by the couple, because they lived out of state and they didn't want to have to keep returning to go to the court. So they just dropped the charges, but Richard did lose his job. He was fired. April the 10th of 1984, Richard would claim his first victim, and it was a 9-year-old little girl, and this took place in the Tenderloin area district of San Francisco, and I hope I pronounced that right. The 9-year-old little girl was outside walking around looking for a dollar bill that she had lost earlier while playing with her brother. And Richard realized what she was doing, and he convinced her that he knew where it was and convinced her to follow him into the basement of the apartment building he was living in. Now, once he got her into the basement, he strangled, beat, and raped her. And then he took a switchblade and stabbed her to death with the switchblade. And then he took her blouse and hung her little half-naked body up on a pipe that was running through the basement, and he just left her there. Now, this murder was not tied to Richard until after he was already convicted and in prison, and they did a DNA sample on him and on some DNA that was on the girl, some semen that was on the girl, and then that's when they tied it. So this murder went on unsolved for quite some time before they actually knew that it was Richard that murdered her. 28th, 1984, a 79-year-old woman was found brutally murdered in her apartment in the Gasell Park, Los Angeles. And again, I hope I'm pronouncing these cities right because I'm not real good with pronouncing things, as we all know. What Richard had done is he repeatedly stabbed her in the head, neck, and chest, and he also had slashed her throat so bad that it was to the point she was almost decapitated. Now, Richard did steal all of her valuables out of her home, but it's not been determined if it was before her death or after. 17th of 1985, Richard attacked a 22-year-old woman. And she had just pulled up back home and pulled into the garage, and she seen Richard. So Richard shot her in the face with a 22 caliber handgun. But because she seen Richard, she had put her hands up, and her keys was hanging there in her hand, and the bullet ricocheted off of the keys. So she actually survived. So luckily she seen Richard and put her hands up. Otherwise, I don't think she would have survived. And the police don't think she would have either. So she was very lucky. In the home, her 34-year-old roommate had heard the gunshot. So she ducked down and hid behind a counter. Now, she sat there for a while, and listened. And when she thought everything was okay, because she didn't hear anything else, she stood up because, she wanted to go get help and see what was going on. And when she stood up, Richard shot her in the forehead, killing her instantly with the same gun that he shot the other lady. And then he went through the house and stole all of the valuables, and then he left. Hour, there was a 30-year-old woman sitting in the Monterey Park in her car. Now, Richard pulled her out, shot her twice, went through the car and her personal belongings, took anything of value, and then just left. And when the police arrived, she was pronounced dead. That survived had gave a description of Richard, and all of this violence attract the attention of the media. So the media put that description out there, and he was described as curly haired with bulging eyes that were wide apart, and rotting teeth. And at that time, they gave him nicknames, the nicknames of Walk-In Killer and the Valley Intruder. Now, later, Richard, it's kind of, you'll find out later how Richard got the nickname the Night Stalker, and that'll come about later in the story. 27th, 1985, Richard entered a home that he had robbed a year earlier. Now, this home was just outside of Whittier, California. At 2 a.m., Richard would take a 22 caliber handgun and shoot a 64-year-old man that was sleeping. Woke up his 44-year-old wife, and Richard beat her and bound her, and then started ransacking the house because he had demanded that she tell him where all the valuables was in the home. So while he was trying to gather up these valuables, the lady was actually able to escape her bonds, and she went and got a shotgun out from under the bed that she knew where it was, but unfortunately for her, it wasn't loaded. Richard off. Like, he was so mad. How dare she? This wasn't going to happen. So Richard shot her 3 times with that 22 caliber handgun. Then he went to the kitchen, got a large carving knife, and kept repeatedly stabbing her, mutilating her body. Even after she was dead, he just kept stabbing her. Then he took the knife, he poked out her eyes, and he put the eyes in a jewelry box, which he took with him, and he kept those eyes in that jewelry box until after his arrest. His son found their bodies, and this had to have scarred him, and it probably never leave him. It probably messed him up pretty bad to find his parents that way. Now, he called the police. The police come and investigated, and the police found shells at the scene. And when they analyzed these shells, they realized that it was the same shells shot from the same gun as the other victims. So they realized they had a serial killer on their hands, and they're like, oh no, we got to find this person because he's out there. He's going to do this some more, probably. He's going to hurt other people. But they also found a footprint in the garden or the flower beds outside the home. Now, they took pictures and they cast this, and they realized that these footprints come from a not so common shoe, the Avia sneakers. There wasn't very many of those made at all. In 1985, Richard returned to the Monterey Park area, and he entered the home of a 66-year-old man and his 56-year-old wife. A man with a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Now the man, he didn't kill him, so he started going toward his own gun to try to protect him and his wife, and then Richard beat him to the point that he was unconscious. Then bound the man's wife with thumb cuffs and raped her, and then he ransacked the home and took all the valuables he could find. Now the woman survived, and the man later died at the hospital. 29th of 1985, Richard drove a stolen car to the Monrovia, California area, and he entered the home of an 83-year-old woman and her 81-year-old disabled sister. Hammer in the kitchen, and he bound and bludgeoned the 81-year-old disabled sister in her bedroom. Bound and bludgeoned the 83-year-old and then shocked her with an electrical cord in her bedroom. Into the 81-year-old disabled sister's bedroom, and he raped her. Richard then took lipstick that he had found in the home and drew a satanic pentagram symbol on her thigh and on the walls in both of the women's bedrooms. And then he ransacked the home, took all the valuables, and then left. Now, the woman was found 2 days later alive, but the 83-year-old woman, sadly, she died a few days later. But the 81-year-old disabled sister was actually survived. Of 1985, Richard drove that same stolen car to the Burbank, California area, and he entered the home of a 42-year-old woman. Richard bound her and her 11-year-old son with handcuffs. He bound them together. Now, Richard ransacked the home looking for any valuables he could find. Released the woman, and then he raped her repeatedly and told her not to look at him because if she looked at him, he would cut out her eyes. So he repeatedly raped her. Now this 11-year-old little boy was witnessing all this. So sad. So then after he was done repeatedly raping her, he bound her to her son, and then he left the home. Of 1985, Richard drove a stolen car to Arcadia, California, and he entered the home of a 75-year-old woman. This poor woman lit the lamp until she was unconscious. Then he took I believe it was a 10-inch butcher knife and mutilated her body, just kept stabbing her. Same thing with the other lady, and even after she was dead, he just kept stabbing and stabbing and stabbing her, mutilating her body. He then ransacked the home, took the valuables, and left. Of 1985, Richard broke into a home in Sierra Madre and bludgeoned a 16-year-old girl with a tire iron while she was sleeping in her bed. Now, in this case, I didn't find any information on the girl's parents, where they was, if she was home by herself. I couldn't find any information, but I would think that if her parents was home, they would hear this and they would come in and do something. So I'm assuming she was at home by herself at the time. Looked for a knife all through the house, couldn't find any, so he came back and he tried to strangle this girl with a telephone cord, and it didn't, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't strangle her to death. So he fled the home thinking that Jesus Christ intervened and saved this girl. Now, this girl ended up having to have 478 stitches in her scalp, but she ended up surviving. 1985, Richard robbed the home of a 60-year-old woman in the Monterey Park area. I'm just kind of looking at my notes. She was sleeping in her living room when he entered the home on her couch. How Richard done or killed her is he actually beat her to death and stomped her face, just repeatedly stomped her face. And there was a footprint of an avian sneaker left on her face. So it was pretty bad. She probably suffered pretty bad. But Richard robbed her and then left the house. Woman's house. He went on to drive through 2 other neighborhoods, and then he returned to the Monterey Park area of a 63-year-old woman where he assaulted her and handcuffed her at gunpoint. Now, Richard attempted to rape her and stole her jewelry. He was done taking her jewelry and torturing her. He made her swear to Satan that was all the valuables. And when she did swear that was all the valuables to Satan, then he just left the home. 1985, Richard would purchase a machete, and then he would take and drive a stolen Toyota to the Glendale, California area of a 68-year-old man and a 66-year-old woman. Burst into their bedroom, whacked them one time with the machete, and then shot them and killed them with a .22 caliber handgun. He shot them and killed them. He further mutilated their bodies with the machete. So Richard had something, he just constantly mutilated the bodies even after they were dead of his victims. He then robbed the home, and then he drove the Toyota to Sun Valley, California. 10 a.m., he broke into the home of a family. Had the husband or the father in the head with a .25 caliber handgun, and that killed him instantly. He would bound their 8-year-old son, and then he would repeatedly beat and rape the woman, and then he dragged the woman around the house making her show him where all the valuables was. To Satan that he had all the valuables in the home, and then he left after he got all the valuables, and she swore to Satan. Of 1985, he broke into a couple's home, and he shot the woman in the face with a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun, and he actually shot the man in the neck. Now, the man was fighting Richard, and the man missed 2 more shots. Now, Richard did escape, and he fled the scene. In 1985, Richard drove a stolen car to the Diamond Bar, California area. 30 a.m., Richard entered the home of a 31-year-old man and a 27-year-old woman. As soon as he got in the house, he shot the man in the head with a .25 caliber handgun, and that killed him instantly. The woman, and while he was handcuffing her and beating her, he made her tell him where all the valuables was in the home. Raped this woman, and while he was in the process of brutally raping her and beating her, he made her swear to Satan that she would not scream during his acts of crimes against her. Was brutally raping this woman. Their little 3-year-old son walked into the room, so Richard stopped raping her, tied this 3-year-old up, and then continued to rape her. All the valuables. The woman was too weak to get up and go anywhere herself, so she, the best she could, she untied her little 3-year-old son and instructed him to go to the neighbors to get help. And the little boy went and got help at the neighbor's house. religiously watching the news coverage of his crimes, and he got nervous. So he left the Los Angeles area and he headed to the San Francisco area. Of 1985, Richard entered the home of a couple, a 66-year-old man and a 62-year-old woman. Now, Richard shot the sleeping man with a .25 caliber handgun in the temple, and that killed him instantly. He actually assaulted the woman and shot her in the head, killing her. A pentagram and the phrase "Jack the Knife" on the wall in their bedroom, and then he robbed the home of all of the valuables, and then he left. Footprint at the scene, and these detectives in this area researched because they knew that this specific type of shoe was not common, and what they found was that there was only 6 pairs in size 11.5 that was made. And only 1 pair of those was sent to California and was close enough to where the killer could actually have access to it. So what these cops did was found out who bought this pair of shoes. And this is how they found out that Richard was the serial killer. So these detectives was pretty smart. They drove in there and they investigated and they, used their brains. Whereas the other ones didn't. It's Richard. Diane Feinstein, I think is how you pronounce it. She found out this information and all this information about Richard. Well, she went on a press conference and released and leaked this information. Now, this infuriated the detectives because now she's like giving Richard a heads up so he can destroy evidence. And that's just what he did. He dropped the shoes off the side of the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, he remained in town a couple more days and then he went back to Los Angeles. So she gave him a heads up. In 1985, Richard drove an orange Toyota 76 miles south of Los Angeles to Mission Viejo. Okay. Approached a house and there was a 13-year-old boy awake. Now, this 13-year-old boy knew what was going on. It was all over the news. He heard somebody outside. This freaked him out. So he went and woke his parents up. And then, get this 13-year-old boy was brave enough to run outside. Brave little boy. So he runs outside. He was able to get the color, the make, the style of the car, a partial license plate. And the family reported this to the police. Because, Richard seen the lights and he fled the home, because he didn't want to confront nobody. So he just fled. And thanks to this little 13-year-old boy, they now had something to go on to catch him. Richard entered the home of a 30-year-old man. Now, his 29-year-old fiance was there with him. And when Richard cocked the gun to shoot him, he actually woke up. His fiance recalled, he woke up. So he shot this man I think it was, hold on just a second. He shot the man 3 times in the head. Now, Richard told the woman that he was the Night Stalker. So that's how he got his name, the Night Stalker. He gave it to himself. Fist, because he started beating her, and he made her swear that she loved Satan. Then bound her with neckties that he had found in the closet. And after stealing what he wanted from the home, getting together what he wanted, he dragged this woman to another room and he raped her. He demanded that she tell him exactly where all the valuables was in the home. Now, after she told him, he made her swear to Satan that she wasn't lying, that she was telling the truth. told her to tell everybody that the night stalker was here, and then he left the home. Now, the woman was able to go to the neighbors and get help, and the man would have surgery, and he survived. A complete description of what Richard looked like and everything that had happened. So now they all knew for sure what Richard looked like. 85, the stolen car that the little boy gave the description of and the partial license plate number. Now, it was found in the Wilshire Center, Los Angeles. Now, Richard had went to extensive lengths to clean this car so that there was no fingerprints or anything, but it just so happens he missed one fingerprint on the rear view mirror, and the cops had his fingerprint, and they now knew that it was Richard. 1985, the detectives had a press conference, and in this press conference, they released a mugshot of Richard from a previous arrest, and they told him, we know who you are now, and so will everyone else. There will be no place to hide. 5. Richard took a bus to Tucson, Arizona. He wanted to visit his brother. Now, he wasn't able to meet up with his brother. So, on the morning of August 31st of 1985, he returned to Los Angeles. Now, he was not aware that the media knew, had his face plastered everywhere. He didn't know that they knew for sure who he was. So he entered a store, and when he entered this convenience store, he heard a group of ladies talking about him being the killer. Then he seen his face, so he took off. Now, these angry citizens, they were chasing him. Now, he tried on 3 carjackings unsuccessfully. And finally, one of the angry citizens actually hit him over the head with a fence post. Now, this mob of angry citizens continued beating him severely, brutally beating him until the cops got there and took him into custody. So that's how Richard was caught. The jury for the trial on July 22nd of 1988. Richard actually held up his hand. It had a pentagram drawn on it, and he yelled to everybody, "Hail Satan." There were some jail employees that actually overheard Richard bragging that he was going to have a gun smuggled into the courtroom and that he was going to shoot the prosecutor. So, they installed metal detectors outside the courtroom, and they searched everybody that was going to enter the courtroom. 88, the trial was interrupted because one of the jurors didn't show up. Now, later, the woman that didn't show up, was found in her apartment, shot and killed. So this scared the jury. This absolutely scared the jury. They thought Richard had something to do with it, that he somehow from inside his cell caused this to happen. His boyfriend, and how they found this out is because he was later discovered in a hotel room, and there was a note there confessing what he had done, and he had actually committed suicide with the same gun that he had used to shoot her. 1989, Richard was found guilty, and he was charged with, I'm going to just read them off here because I'm going to tell you wrong, 13 counts of murder, 5 counts of attempted murder, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. 1989, Richard was sentenced to death in the gas chamber. And Richard would go on to tell the media, big deal, death was always a part of the territory. See you in Disneyland. So he didn't care. It didn't bother him. The detectives feel like there was other murders that Richard had committed. But unfortunately, just because these murders that they feel like was from him, was the same way. They were robbed, they were killed, the woman was raped, that kind of thing. It was the same thing, but there was no evidence to tie these other crimes to Richard, so they was not able to technically say they were from Richard. Now, Richard did go on to file several appeals throughout the year, trying to not be, for his sentences to be stopped. He wanted to be cleared of all this. So he kept filing appeals. Now, he had, and I don't know why, I don't know what's wrong with people, especially these women, but he had fans, and they would write him letters, they would go visit him in prison, and there was one woman in particular, Doreen Loy. She had wrote him 75 letters. So in 1988, now she'd started writing him in 1985. Then in 1988, yes, Richard proposed to her. So then on October 3rd of 1996, they were married in the San Quentin State Prison. Now, she would stay with him until, and in 2009, the DNA proved that he had killed that 9-year-old little girl. And then this is when she would leave him. She was okay as long as it was adults, but when it was a kid that he killed, no, she wasn't having that. And before that, she had found out about this kid. She actually had made the comment that when Richard was put to death in the gas chamber, that she was going to commit suicide and die with him. So this woman, I mean, come on. What are you thinking? Get better standards. So she ended up divorcing him, though, and leaving him because of the little girl. Now, Richard would go on to be engaged to a 23-year-old writer, Kristen Lee. So he was engaged at the time that he died. On June 7th of 2013, and he died from complications of a disease, the B-cell lymphoma, and he had other health issues as well, but that's what he ended up dying from. And the whole time that he was in prison, he kept filing appeals. So that's when Richard died. I feel like that Richard was molded into a killer at a young age, and he grew up thinking that that's what he should do. And I feel like Mike, his cousin, should be in trouble, and I feel like Roberto should be in trouble. And these women that wanted, the one that married him and the other one that was engaged, like these fans, like, what is wrong with people? I don't know. Just let me know your thoughts. If there's any stories that you want, just make a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. My next story that I'll be doing, I'm actually going to get ready to start researching that today, was my daughter's idea. So I want to give a shout out to her for giving me the idea for the next story, Sierra. But you guys stay safe out there. If you know anybody that likes these types of stories, send them my way, send them to my page. That way we can get more people watching. Just you guys stay safe, be careful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.